people have watched crime films, but the way these people commit crimes, most people probably haven't seen it. They don't rob banks, they go straight to the mint, and they rob 2 billion at a time. The leader of these people is called the professor, and the others are all wanted criminals. In the professor's first class he told everyone they would spend 5 months planning an activity. The people gathered here are not simple. This woman is called Tokyo. She robbed over a dozen banks. She has a lot of crimes. And this man is tough. His name is Berlin. He's also in charge of this operation. This bearded man is called Moscow. He used to be a miner. Now his main task is to help dig through the underground route. This young man is Moscow's son Denver. His fists are really tough. He's used to solving everything with his fists. This guy named Rio is different. He has a really good brain. Rio learned to program at 6. He knows a lot about systems and electronic devices right now. These twins are called Oslo and Helsinki. They're good at using their fists. They'll punch whoever they don't like. This woman named Nairobi is not simple either. She's a counterfeiting expert in the industry. She can create anything perfectly. Finally there's the professor. He's very mysterious. He hasn't left any criminal record. Nobody knows his existence. He's just like a ghost. The first stop where they gathered this time is the Royal Mint of Spain. This female robber was not only subdued by the police, she was also asked to take off her clothes and squat on the ground. Even though Tokyo was very unconvinced, she could only do as she was told. Turns out not long ago, Tokyo formed a gang with her companions. Their target wasn't the bank, but the printing factory. After the operation started, they used roadblocks to stop the truck carrying printing paper, and interfered with all the signal sources, so that the other side couldn't call for support. Then they took the chance to subdue the police officers. Facing such powerful opponents, the police officers didn't dare to resist at all. In just a few seconds, they were easily subdued. Right after that, the team members changed into the other side's clothes, and they did this to get in smoothly. But this preparation wasn't enough. What they needed to do most now was to wait for a hostage to come in, because with this hostage, the police wouldn't dare to use force against them. Soon, the hostage came, and their operation officially started. First the hacker Rio cut off all the devices. Right after that, Berlin and other companions disguised as security guards and sneaked inside, while Tokyo came to the door to wait for backup. Before long, gunshots rang out in the venue. The inside was in chaos. By this time all the people had been controlled. On the other side, the blaster used super cutting technology, successfully opened the vault door. There were tons of wealth inside, but their ambition was more than that. In the bathroom, Moscow pulled out a communication wire from the toilet, successfully set up a communication system with the professor, then cut off the signal of the printing factory, so that no one could eavesdrop on them talking. Right after that, several people walked to the front door with the banknotes. Just when others thought the robbers were about to leave, a shocking scene appeared. They actually pressed the alarm device directly. Seeing this situation, the staff nearby were dumbfounded, but judging from their methods, these people were obviously a group of well-trained robbers. It turned out that the real purpose of these robbers wasn't to rob, but to print money in the printing factory. Soon, the siren sounded outside the door. After hearing it, Tokyo actually picked up the money bag and went outside the door, and then took advantage of the police's inattention, quickly dropped the money bag and withdrew. And the reason why they did this was to make the other side relax their vigilance. Actually, they wanted to delay time by relying on hostages. Because as long as there were hostages, the police wouldn't dare to act easily, and in order not to let the incident expand its influence, the police could only try to carry out a forced attack. In short, hostages must be rescued first. However, they didn't know all of this was in the professor's plan. In order to make the police unable to lock the target, the robbers changed the hostages into the same uniforms as theirs, and then put on the same masks. When the police opened a gap at the gate, and used the observation mirror to check the situation inside, they were shocked by the scene in the hall, because they couldn't tell who the hostages were at all. And at this time the plan of forced attack completely failed. There was no way. The police had to terminate this action. However, they didn't know this was just the first round. On the other side, the machines in the printing factory were running non-stop. The robbers asked the staff to speed up, to produce at a speed of 8 million euros per hour, and their ultimate goal was 4 billion euros. At this time every robber was very excited, because this was the richest hourly wage they had ever seen. As long as they succeeded, they would not only make history, but also be able to enter retirement life early. Soon, the police couldn't bear the pressure here. They took the lead in contacting the robbers, and it was the professor who had turned on the voice changer that answered the phone. So no matter how the police asked, they couldn't find a breakthrough point, because the other side didn't want money, nor transportation. They just simply wanted to trouble the police. The person in charge was very depressed, so she came out to relax. Just when she was about to call home, she found that her mobile phone was out of power. The next second, the man next to her asked her if she needed help. However, the person in charge didn't know. The man in front of her was the source of her pain. They're holding 67 hostages confronting the police, aiming to buy time. The longer the time is, the more they can print. To calm the hostages' emotions, the robbers took them to the rooftop. Once they showed up, the police were dumbfounded, because the hostages and robbers were dressed exactly the same. Impossible to tell their identities. At this time, a hostage saw the police on the opposite side. He thought it was the best chance to escape. The robbers saw the hostage wanted to resist, so they planned to teach him a lesson, while the police didn't know the situation. Thought the robbers wanted to execute the hostage. As a result, after one order, the hostage fell down. When the mask dropped, the police realized it was a trap. The robbers immediately told the media about this. Instantly there was a huge stir outside, but luckily the hostage wasn't in life-threatening danger. The police immediately contacted the professor, asked to send doctors in for treatment. The professor agreed. Of course, the reason why the professor did this was that he wanted to hold the initiative in his hands, and things turned out just as he thought. The police were mixed among the doctors who came in. The professor immediately contacted his teammates.
Listen carefully. One of those doctors is an undercover cop.
Which one?
The one with glasses. You know what to do.
Absolutely, we're on it.
Berlin. This has to be handled flawlessly.
Of course.
When the doctors went in, Berlin asked them to hand over all their personal belongings. When the robbers got the police's glasses, they embedded a tiny listening device on them. So when they finished the operation on the hostages, turned around, they were all scared by the robbers. They all put on another new kind of mask. At this time, the police who came in also realized their plan had been known by the robbers. After coming out, this police officer immediately ran back to the command room, timely terminated this operation. So in the second confrontation between the two sides, the robbers won again. Under the excuse of operating on hostages, unexpectedly the robbers see through it at a glance. Even install a listening device on their side. Now the robbers know police actions well, which gives them more time to print money. But the professor never expected. An accident happens at this time. Someone in the team breaks the first ban. That is, no hostage can die by their hands. And because of the conflict between Berlin and her boyfriend, Tokyo even threatens Berlin to tell the professor.
I've broken the first rule of the plan. I killed the hostage. Well, not me. It was Denver. He killed her. But he was only following orders that I had given him. And I've chosen to tell you personally.
The professor is extremely angry, because what Berlin did may ruin all his plans, which plants the seed for the professor to frame Berlin in the later plot. On the other side, the police make a major discovery. They find in the printing factory surveillance. Tokyo came to scout a few days ago, and saw that Tokyo left the car key on a plate, so the police immediately lock on this car. While the professor hasn't recovered from the team member killing the hostage, he hears about their car being exposed. There are fingerprints of all team members in the car. Facing such a situation, how should the professor deal with it? This must be the robbery with the biggest commission. Robbers took 67 hostages to delay time. Then they turned on the machines in the printing factory, producing at 8 million euros per hour. If they could delay for 11 days, they could get 4 billion euros. But before 2 days passed, the police found Tokyo, who scouted beforehand in the surveillance from days ago, and also found the car key she left. The professor, who monitored the whole process, immediately called Moscow, who was to destroy the vehicle. When he learned Moscow didn't handle the fingerprints, he rushed to the scrapyard right away. But before he found the car, he was discovered by the factory manager. In a hurry, the professor could only hide in the car. Not long after, the professor heard the footsteps walking away. Just when he thought he escaped, the next second,
Stop! Put me down!
the car was lifted into the air, then rolled in the air for a while, until the factory manager had enough fun. He let the professor out. Right after that, he gave the professor 5 seconds to leave.
I count to 5, then let Doug go.
After the professor escaped from the scrapyard, he didn't give up. Instead, he entered the scrapyard again. This time he found the target quickly. After putting on the mask and gloves, the professor wiped all the places with fingerprints on the car. After dealing with everything, the professor put Captain Berlin's button on the car. He wanted to punish the other side, because before the operation, he always emphasized, don't kill the hostages, but Berlin violated his own ban. However, the professor didn't know. The hostages were okay. They were hidden in a hidden place. Just then, a police car roared by. The professor immediately lowered his head, then escaped when the other side wasn't paying attention. In a hurry, he got into a van. To better disguise himself, the professor tore his clothes, covered his whole body with mud, so when facing the police's questioning, they wouldn't connect the professor's look with the robbers. Shortly after the professor left, the police found the target vehicle, but they found it had just been cleaned, and found the professor's button in the passenger seat. Almost immediately, the police thought of the homeless man just now, but when they chased after him, the professor had already disappeared. This was the third encounter between the two sides, ending with the police's failure. That's the baddest robbers I've ever seen. They just took over the mint. Now it's the second day of their takeover. The mint machines are making 8 million euros an hour, and they aim for 4 billion euros. But when they cased the place, they forgot to clean up the fingerprints. The professor went to the scrapyard to fix it, but the factory boss saw him. He got away lucky, but now the factory boss is telling the cops what he looks like, but it won't be long till the cops use high-tech to get his picture. The professor, who heard all this, started moving right away. He first found out the factory boss's family info, then slipped into a police car when the cops weren't looking, and grabbed the radio to threaten the factory boss.
Ja Perić skuluj. Твоей дочери Карине люди из моей организации Каструмия видят, как твоя супруга покидает супермаркет. Если футорова, который ты составишь, будет похож на меня, ты больше никогда не увидишь ни одну из них.
The factory boss listened to the professor, quickly took down the almost done picture, and the cop's hard-won clue was cut off again. Lisboa thinks there's gotta be a mole around them. To wrap up this case fast, the cops had to start with the buttons. Soon, they found a fingerprint on them, and locked onto Berlin. The cops told the media about it, and said Berlin wasn't just a robber, there's a scary group behind him. Berlin, who always cared about his rep, got real mad hearing this, but he ain't stupid enough to fight the cops. After all, money matters more than rep. The cops saw Berlin didn't fall for it, so they started questioning his old cellmates. Found out Berlin only had half a year to live, and was taking a special drug. The cops quickly zeroed in on a few pharmacies. To stop the mole from spilling the beans, Lisboa only gave orders to his assistant, but when the assistant got to the pharmacy, the ledgers and purchase records were gone. The assistant wanted to call the boss, then he remembered. Only two of them knew about this, so either he or Lisboa is the mole. The professor, to waste time, told his teammates to start Plan B right away.
Fire!
Actually, the reason they did this was just to make the police think they were executing hostages. Sure enough, not long after, the police chief Lisboa called, said to make sure the hostages were safe, she'd go into the mint to check the situation. The professor agreed at once, not knowing this was also a way to waste time. When the chief walked into the mint, Captain Berlin kindly poured her coffee, but he didn't gather the hostages together. Instead, let them come out one by one, because every extra minute they delayed, they'd get tens of thousands of euros more. Like this, it took half a day for 67 hostages to finish, and the robbers got a lot more money. After Lisboa came back, she had a big fight with her assistant, because only the two of them knew about the pharmacy thing. She suspected the assistant was the mole. The assistant was really angry, said he was loyal and loved her deeply. If Lisboa wanted to suspect someone, she should suspect the men she met in the cafe. The men the assistant mentioned was the professor. Since Lisboa met the professor once, she fell in love. Then the assistant, to prove his innocence, came to the professor's place himself, hoped to find some clues. He took the spoon the professor used. Sure enough, after testing, the assistant found on the spoon the same fingerprint as on the police car. The assistant could finally prove his innocence, and the professor was about to be exposed. How would he deal with it? Cooperated with the professor from inside and outside, but as time goes by, even the most perfect plan will have flaws. According to the evidence provided by the assistant, the inspector confirmed that the professor's fingerprints were the same as those of the person who stole the police car. This also proved that the professor was the robber's accomplice. After the assistant learned this news, immediately called Lisboa, but he didn't know Lisboa was talking about life and ideals with the professor. And the person in charge, in order not to be disturbed, even muted his cell phone. The assistant saw that the phone couldn't get through. Southwest HE prepared to drive to find the other person. Unexpectedly, an accident happened. He's so unlucky. His goddess was talking about ideals with others, while he had an accident trying to prove his innocence. By this time, the professor's crisis was temporarily resolved. But there was a big problem in the mint on the other side. The hostages thought the robbers would leave after robbing the money, but they didn't expect that 3 days had passed, and they were still trapped here. Some people couldn't bear this kind of life, and began to plan to escape. But facing the robbers' strict guard, could they really succeed? A man tied tools to his body with tape, and the robbers who didn't know that the crisis was coming. The mint director first found a reason to send Moscow away, then helped the hostages open the handcuffs with tools. When Moscow came back again, he was directly knocked down. Then, the hostages took weapons and prepared to escape. The director saw the chance to escape, immediately rushed to inform his girlfriend. However, when he opened the door, he was completely shocked, because he saw the woman was having an intimate interaction with the robber. The director felt humiliated, but he was no match for the robber. Finally, he even told the robber the news that the hostages were escaping.
They're escaping! They're escaping! What? They're escaping! 16 hostages! 16 hostages right this second! And I know where they are!
Denver realized the seriousness of the matter. He immediately went back to inform his teammates, but the hostages had already reached the exit at this time. On the other side, the professor also discovered this scene in the surveillance, but it was too late for him to stop it now.